My name is Paul Ferrara, and I work for the American Printing House for the Blind, APH. My position there is called Communications Accessibility Editor, and that is really a term that just means that for the communications and engagement department, which is involved in marketing and communications, I test all the stuff that we produce to make sure that it's accessible. I do a lot of work testing websites, things that are going to be stuff that we may put out on the web, and just keep up with accessibility trends as well, so that I know what's happening, what's coming. Certifications. I create braille for our department and for some other departments. So everything accessibility related. As far as me personally, I grew up in the state of Delaware, lived in a few other places, but mostly there for a good portion of time, and then came to Louisville for seminary in around 1995 or so, left for a couple of years to teach, and then came back in the early 2000s, and I've stayed here. And as far as I know, I plan to stay here for the rest of my life.
Okay, awesome. So I don't know. First question that pops in my head is why accessibility, or what made you interested in the field that you are working on right now?
I would say that I'm one of these people that, some people know what they want to do when they grow up. I was kind of one of these people that never really knew what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I kind of threw around a few different things. If I had full vision, I probably would want to do sports play by play. I really love sports, and am part of a weekly sports show that is on an internet radio station, and that's been fun. But I would have loved to have been able to do play by play, and that just wasn't possible. So I really wasn't sure. And I had been doing customer service for a while back in the late 2000s, and then it had turned into collections work. And that was really tough work. And there was one day I was just sitting there thinking to myself, you know, assistive and adaptive technology is stuff that is important to you. Why don't you do something in that field? You don't have to know what this minute, but if you're going to do something else and you're going to advance or whatever, think about it and start figuring out what you want to do. And so I started doing research on what might be involved and what kind of things were out there, and hit some brick walls at first. And then I interviewed for the position at APH. I didn't end up getting the position, but I got contacted by the supervisor, who said, our department, which at the time was called Accessible Tests, we have vendors that do tests online, and we need to know if these things are screen reader accessible. So it's consulting work. Would you be interested in doing it? So I took her up on it as quickly as I could, and I figured that was my way either into that department or somewhere else in APH. Did that work for a couple of years on the side while I kept my full-time collections job. And then late in 2015, the position that I ended up getting at APH, which was social media coordinator, came open. I applied for that, got that position, started in early 2016. And then the department I was part of was the communications department. And then we started bringing in people that had more marketing background and interest, and we started changing that department. And the department grew, and most people had their roles change. And I didn't think at first that I was going to have a change. And then there was a story that came out. While I was doing social media, I got in touch with a lady who wrote an article that talked about hey, you need to caption all the stuff that you put out on social media. So I wrote her and I said, you may not have thought about this, but that is perfect advice for people who are blind. If they want to understand what you've put out on social media, you need to caption it. And that really hits home with me. I'm glad you wrote that. So we had a dialogue for a few weeks, and she ended up writing a national article in her blog about accessibility. And I sent it to my supervisor at the time, who said, I can see your heart is in accessibility. And I think everybody knew that. And so she came to me one day and said, we really need an accessibility person in the department. Would you be willing to leave the social media role and take the accessibility role? It's brand new. You'll be the first one to do it. And so I said yes. I knew that it was a new thing entirely, but it's been a great change and switch.
Okay, awesome. Well, you were mentioning at the beginning that you would not be doing what you were doing if you were fully sighted. Did I don't know, that perceptions changed from the moment you started out to now?
It's I mean, there's probably no way that I would have known as much about the technology if I were fully sighted, because it wouldn't have been something that would have been a priority. I mean, I would have learned the basic stuff that I need to know to get through and handle computer programs and so on and so forth. But there's no way that I would have probably cared that much about screen readers and what they do. I mean, I would have had no reason to. So it's just one of those things that, because the need was there and because I had to learn that way, it was, it was a natural fit. I just don't think I ever really thought about growing up, hey, you should do something with this and pursue it further. I mean, I don't know if I would have called it a hobby, an interest for sure. And I thought, this is important to you. Why don't you do something with it more full time instead of just having it be something that you use? It turned out that even when I was doing collections, that I would test things for my employer at the time, but when I inquired about doing that full time, they said, "Oh, no, that's taken care of." In other words, somebody somewhere else that you'll never see is doing that work, and we're just having you sort of fill in here and there. So I knew I was never going to be able to do something for them in that realm, and that bothered me. But I knew that it was just going to have to be. I was just going to have to move on, and do that kind of work somewhere else.
I see. So, well, you're talking a bit about the lack of accessibility at your previous job. How often do you encounter that situation where accessibility is not fully developed?
Well, at that employer, they did a good job with accessibility. What they struggled with was, they didn't have, as far as I knew anyway, people in the U.S. that their job was fully to test accessibility, except for maybe like the main person that was the head of diversity, inclusion, accessibility, and that person eventually was given a forced retirement. So they brought somebody new in, but there really wasn't a person that was charged with, here, test this program. And so they had a situation that came up during the last little bit of time that I was there, where they put out a couple of different updates to software all at the same time, and it broke everything. And by that I mean you couldn't work. So they were gracious. They paid us while they tried to fix it, and we became de facto testers. But even then, I tried to lobby for, you need a full time accessibility tester, and I can do that. And they still said, oh no, we have that taken care of. So really, the lack wasn't in accessibility per se. The lack was in having a dedicated tester, having somebody to do what I'm doing for APH now.
Okay, okay, yes, I think I understand it a bit better now. And well, yeah, for example, now that you have been working with APH for a while, has your role changed as you grew within the company, or how have you evolved since the moment you started out with APH?
It definitely changed in 2018 when I moved from social media to the accessibility position. I was doing some accessibility work on the side. I was still helping out the test department on occasion, and I was testing things for accessibility. But that was just one part of what I was doing. It was maybe 10 to 20% of it was doing stuff and posting to social media and writing blogs. And in 2018, when they asked me to move to the accessibility position, that was a big change. I mean, it was a it was what happened to pretty much everybody in the department. Their role had changed, and so mine changed. And then in the last year, the other thing that's changed is with all the virtual things that are going on, we started doing a tremendous amount of webinars. And during the spring, we were preparing things for virtual conventions, for the blindness conventions and conferences. And that involved a lot of voice work and talking. And so folks started realizing and remembering that, I was doing a sports show. I've had experience in radio. So they started having me host a lot of webinars. So that's sort of been added into my position as well. So that just sort of I think they wanted me to expand into some other things, and that really came up at a really good time.
Okay, great. Well, yes, I feel that. And again, I've seen you in action. We've had a couple of webinars where you're basically hosting, explaining to everyone. You're a lot better than me when it comes to hosting webinars, and I think I have a lot to learn from you. So I actually am a bit curious regarding the fact that so many people right now lack that discipline or that well, yeah, I'm going to say discipline because a lot of people from the visually impaired community are not that interested in using technology. For example, I've encountered some people, usually, well, seniors, of course, who might not be as interested or who might not be interested in mastering, for example. Oh, you know what? I'm not aware of this software. I have no clue what Zoom is, for example. So I'm not going to touch it. Uh, well, tell me more about that.
Well, it's when growing up, I remember one thing that I heard many, many times. I had family that worked with their hands and did mechanical work, worked on machinery, et cetera, et cetera. And, they told me, look, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to get educated and you're going to have to learn, and your education is going to get you employed. You can't do what we do. And so that meant learning stuff like, back then it was the Apple IIe computer and some of the speech stuff that was around back then, which is far less advanced. But it was the beginning of it. And you just, as far as I'm concerned, unless you have some really great skill for building things and making things, if you're visually impaired, you really do need to take the time to learn technology. I don't think it is a maybe you should and maybe you shouldn't. It's a definite you should. And if you don't, you'll get left behind. I mean, if you want to be able to use some of the things that are available on smartphones, you better learn how to use a smartphone. If you want to be able to use the internet and all that's involved in the internet, you better learn how to use the internet. And that means you better learn how to use a screen reader or a screen magnifier or both, depending on your level of vision. It's optional for some folks. They can get away with saying, "Oh, I'm not a techie," and all that. But if you are blind or visually impaired, even if you don't want to be a techie, you need to learn the basic stuff. And if you don't, it's going to be very difficult for you. I just really feel that that's extremely important. And if you don't do it and you refuse to do it, you do so at your own peril.
Do you think that the use of technology and the use of tools is directly related to the whooping fact that a very large amount of people in the visually impaired community are unemployed?
I wouldn't call it a direct correlation, but I would say it's a very strong one. There are two things that are extremely important. Braille readers seem to be employed at a higher rate. I don't think that's an accident. I think that's absolutely because Braille leads to literacy.
You know Beryl,
It,
right?
yes, I started at age 4 with Braille. It helps with spelling, grammar, literacy. Audio is great, but you can't learn to spell by just hearing a word, and you don't make grammatically correct sentences just by hearing people. If what you hear is poor grammar, you're going to develop poor grammar. You have to learn to literally read, not just listen. APH is huge with into Braille, and that's part of the reason why. So Braille for those with no vision, it's extremely important. Technology for people with all levels of vision is extremely important. If you're going to use magnification, if you're going to use screen reader, if you can use Braille, you're going to use large print, use it. I mean, it's out there, and there are so many ways to learn things now. You know, it's not just one or two ways. I mean, there are tons of podcasts, books, there's software, there's just anything you can think of now. Constantly people advertising, I will teach you to learn how to do this and how to do that. And I just there's no excuse. You really need to learn it. Um, Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's new, if it's difficult, if you're willing, you may not learn it as fast as I did. You may learn it twice as fast as I did. It doesn't matter though, but you do really do need to learn and put the effort in.
Absolutely. Great points. Especially, of course, about Braille. I agree with you. If you don't know how to use a computer, regardless of your level of vision, you're out of the out of the majority of the workforce right now, and tendency indicates that in the future, well, most of the jobs will become either very technological or very creative, right? So uh, jobs in between are I believe at risk. Um, but yes, thank you for sharing that. I do want to hear more about what you were mentioning um, regarding the importance of Braille, but specifically for people who are young, because I have seen and I've heard of people that don't like Braille and they are not comfortable learning it, or they are not interested simply. Um, and I would love for them to know and hear what you were mentioning before.
So I'll say this, that I had teachers, uh, TBIs, resource teachers that expressed the importance of it when I was really young. Like I said, I started at age 4 learning Braille. So I just can't remember a time without it. And it's the responsibility of the parent, the teacher, the instructor to foster that interest, to increase the interest, to push. People don't like to push people, but my grandfather, when he was alive, pushed, and he wasn't shy about it, and he didn't hesitate, and he just basically said, and others did too. And I didn't even always know it at the time. I understand it now, but for instance, in 6th grade, I had been typing, not perfectly by any means. There wasn't. I didn't have a PC, but my TVI at the time basically told me over the summer. He said, "How's your typing?" I said, "Well, it's okay." He said, "Well, good. It's going to get a lot better because from here on out, we're not going to translate your work from Braille to print. You're going to turn in typed work from now on," which eventually led to turning in work that was done on a computer and a printer. But the idea was, you're going to learn how to use a QWERTY keyboard and get better at it. We're not going to give you a choice. You're going to have to do it. So I say that to say, folks need to push their students, and they need to, uh, even if a student is a little bit unwilling, um, there just needs to be some times when you push that student and make them get out of a comfort zone and say, I know you may not want to do this, but you need to do it. And you as an individual sometimes have to say, I don't really want to do this, but I know I need to do it. And if I do, the benefits are going to be greater than if I don't. So, um, we're not talking about being harsh with folks, but I do think that we need to sometimes not baby people and be a little bit more forceful and say, you need to do this and you need to do that. And I think we are too easy on folks sometimes and too soft. And then we don't like the results that we get, but we're not willing to make the effort to make changes. And there are too many things that are out of our control. So we need to work on controlling the things that we can.
Absolutely. Powerful, powerful stuff right there.
I didn't expect to get on this soapbox today, but just one of these things.
No. I appreciate that. I feel that we are on the same page. And again, I'm actually, well, I've been working for Suno for a couple of years now. I did have a friend throughout middle, well, elementary and middle school that was visually impaired, and obviously I didn't see any disability, or I mean, I treated him as everybody else. So it was not hard for me coming to Sunu and understanding our clients, understanding the situation. So, well, talking of course about inclusion, uh, as far as percentage, or I don't know how to name it, but how far along do you think we are from becoming a fully inclusive society?
Ooh, there's so many ways you could take that, and I don't think we'll ever be perfect. And I think we need to realize that. And some of the reasons for that are probably for another discussion and another day. But I think we need to make the efforts to make sure that things are available for as many people as possible. But the one part of this that gets left aside at times, while folks, and sometimes rightly, complain about what's not available, and what needs to be done to make things better and more accessible. And believe me, I'm talking about that stuff every day. Um, there are still times when it comes down to there's things out there, but you have to, as an individual, take advantage of them as well. I mean, there is two sides to the coin, and an inaccessible website is a problem. An inaccessible app is a huge problem. But it doesn't matter how accessible the app or the website is if you don't use it, it does you no good. So it's simple as, well, we just need to make everything accessible and it'll be perfect. We do need to do that. But at the same time as we do all that, we also need to instill in folks initiative and drive, and try to make sure that folks are willing. At APH we talk a lot about uh, making sure that everyone has an equal chance or an equal opportunity. Um, that in and of itself doesn't guarantee you that the results will be the same for everybody. We can make the best products we can make, but you still have to use them.
Of course. Absolutely. And well, you were mentioning the fact that some people complain like that they're, I mean, I don't know, we're missing these pieces of technology, or we don't have this, we don't have that. As far as, and I know you're a big fan of technology, so as far as assistive technology, um, what are your thoughts regarding the current situation? Because I feel, and of course that's my perspective, but I feel that we have been pushing towards the right direction. I don't know, as far as talking about independence and mobility, and the fact that you should be comfortable walking outside or going from one place to the other. But I also want to hear your perspective and your feedback as far as assistive technology and assistive technology companies. What do you think about that? Are we at the right pace, too slow, wrong direction? I don't know. I want to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think that generally it's going in a good direction. I would AI is really helping in a lot of ways. There's a lot of AI that is involved in apps that are really good with reading and identifying objects and text and all that stuff. That's outstanding. That helps everybody. Voice assistants are mainstream technology, but they help people who are blind and visually impaired just as much, even though they're not constructed for that. But adaptive and assistive technology, it's getting better all the time, as far as I'm concerned. There's always going to be things that we'd like to have better. It would be great if GPSs were accurate to an inch and not feet in yards. It'd be great if you could have no barriers, and your screen reader didn't matter what you put in front of it, it knew what it was. I mean, the limitations notwithstanding, I mean, I'm enthusiastic about the things that are being created, that are being developed, and as long as the developer understands that, and not just the developer, but the people that are hearing about it or reading about it, or understanding that what's happening is not that we are helping the poor disabled person out, that we are just providing things that make their opportunities the same. It doesn't matter what product it is, the best product in the world is going to be received the best if its developers understand, hey, we're here to make things better. We're not here to help, pitiful people. News coverage, news coverage to me, you have two extremes that we want to avoid. And the one is I'm a superhero because I'm a person with a disability and I can tie my shoes. I can get up, I can walk, I can put something in the microwave and cook it. I can operate my Keurig, whatever. Just dumb, stupid stuff. Basic stuff that everybody does. You know, that there's nothing heroic about that. It's not a big deal. On the other hand, it's not the poor, pathetic person with a disability. You know, we have to help those poor people. The more technology and the more everything that's out there, where we just get stuff done and we just do things, the less those things are important, the less they're noticed. If that makes sense. I mean, say somebody has a Sunu band and they travel with it, and their travel is improved to where they don't need as much assistance from somebody else. They can get places. They can do things they weren't able to do before. That improves their quality of life, and it also improves the perceptions that someone else may have of them. And you can apply that same thinking to any number of technologies, and you just pick any one that you want. If the result of that use of that technology is improved efficiency, being able to do things you weren't able to do before, able to do them faster, better, higher quality, less mistakes, less problems, less need for other people to be involved. That's a win for everybody, and it's going to certainly have people be viewed as a person, and yeah, they happen to have this disability as well. But hey, they're not special. They're not to be praised for getting basic tasks done, and they're not to be pitied. They're just people, and
Okay.
that really is important.
Okay. So I would say, and I don't know, to what you're saying in a nutshell, equal, not less, not more, but equal.
Equal, yeah, right. I don't need to be put on a pedestal, and I don't need to be pitied. Equality.
Okay. Awesome. I would say that's a great way to put it. Thank you for that. All right. So, and of course, this I think this conversation could go on, and I want to follow up, Paul, if you agree with me. But I would like to wrap up this the first part of this episode. I'm going to call it that. Um, with I would like you to share some feedback, some I don't know, some advice uh, for people who might be listening or who might be watching us right now, and who because again, you have an awesome job and you have a great position at APH, and I know that that's a position that a lot of people would love to be in right now. So, what would be some advice, some feedback for people who want to get to where you are right now?
I would say a few things. Expect expect to fail on a number of occasions before you necessarily succeed. I applied for more than one position at APH before I got hired. Um, and I would also say if you can find somebody that is in a position that is important to you, try to get to know them. If they can mentor you, that's even better. But if they can't, but you can pick their brain a little bit, do it. See if they're willing to talk to you and answer questions and whatnot. I mean, we have to understand that an important part of all of this, and I don't like it, and I certainly didn't like going through it, is that there's a lot of bumps in the road, and a lot of times that you're going to fall down, and it doesn't feel good. So it's not like I woke up and ended up in this position. You know, if you go back to 5 years ago, I was I was still at my old job, which is still better than a lot of people would say. Well, you at least had a job, but I wasn't happy. I was not motivated, and had I been able to just quit, it more than once crossed my mind to do that. But expect to have some difficult moments along the way. Do your very best if you can to find somebody that can be a mentor or someone to look up to, or that you can come to ask questions to. Um, be willing to learn. You may not agree with everything somebody says, and you don't feel like you have to, but listen to them and try to understand why they have the theory they do and the thought they do, and just be willing to take that information and learn from it. I mean, someone else may give very different advice than I do, and that's fine, but you need to be able to filter it and take something from what they tell you and use it, even if it's just for encouragement. It's not an easy road, and anybody who paints a picture to you that it is an easy road is lying to you. It's not. But it's worth going down the road.
Okay, okay, awesome. Well, those were some powerful words as well. I appreciate you sharing them, and I agree with you. Fail. What was the saying? Fail hard, and fail often. 'Cause I think that's the only way, or that's the only path where you will be able to get to where you want to be. Right?
I, you know, I as much as I like positivity and all that stuff, man, sometimes you just have to be blunt and say sometimes some things just they ain't good. You know, in my best English, they ain't good.